Alright, I want to do an up close look at how to remove the intake manifold off of a Volkswagen 2.0 turbo. So this is a junkyard and I'm taking parts off, so I'm going to show you, but some of the stuff is missing. This is the air intake stuff that you would normally take off here, so assume that you've taken this off, which is pretty simple to do. Next thing we're going to do is take some of these hoses off and the electrical connections off. So you can see there's electrical connections here, electrical connections there, this hose, some of the stuff that we can disconnect right there, and then we follow this hose back and we can kind of like pop this off and put it to the side. This kind of just presses in. Once this top hose is off, you can just start disconnecting this electrical connection. There's a hose that you press, hose clamp that you press here, and you pull this out. It's broken on this car, you can also disconnect this with some pliers, pull the hose clamp off and pull the hose off and set it to the side. And then there's more electrical connections on the bottom that we're going to get to. Next one, we'll get this hose off and we'll also disconnect this electrical connection, and these couple electrical connections down here. Just to trace these hoses back, this front hose goes right there. And then this top hose, which is in the back, was the one that went to the fuel pressure regulator right there. So we can kind of put these to the side. There's actually no need to disconnect these electrical connections. If we just take this entire bracket off the intake manifold, there's two Torx T27 bolts right there. And while we got the Torx out, we want to go ahead and take this bolt out, and then there's one more right there. One more right there. So take that one out and this one out, and that way we can get this bracket off of the intake manifold. Ultimate goal being to take this out of here to get more access, but I'm gonna take these hose clamps off with the 7mm, and this is the throttle body. So once we take this hose off, we'll have better access to this clamp, and then we can kind of remove the two clamps for these two hoses, and I'm gonna just kind of lift it and put it to the side. It's actually 3 clamps down there, 1, 2, and then a third one down there. So I figured it'd be easier to just remove it from up top here. So I've pulled the clamps back. That way we can kind of maneuver this out of the way, and then this can kind of this can go down and it won't obstruct us pulling this off. Also, forgot to take this electrical connection off. Make sure you take this off too. I'm also taking these 3 screws out on top to loosen up this bracket, and then disconnect the electrical connection from that bracket by pushing this in, and also it'll free up our fuel line for later. Make sure you don't lose your screws. There's also another 10mm bolt on top. You can take that off. Next thing, you want to pull this off, and then once you get the electrical connections off right here and there, you can pull these wires underneath this sensor and off to the side. And then there's these 4 T27 for the throttle body. So one goes right there, another one in the back there, another one right there, and then one more right there in the back. Take the throttle body off, that way we'll get better access to the bolts at the bottom. This thing was kind of getting in my way, so I took this bolt off here. That way I can kind of pull this back to get to these bolts a little bit better. The front 2 bolts are easy enough to get to. This one, if you move this whole thing to the side, this bolt is very easy. And then the last one, unfortunately, it's a little bit more difficult to get to. It's hidden behind this, so you kind of have to feel around and get it. Unfortunately, one thing I'm not able to show you, you see that rusty hole back there? There should be a bracket that comes up and attaches to the intake manifold. So this has probably been removed in the past where they did not put that bracket back on, but that bracket does need to go back on. One thing special about that bracket is that it uses a triple square bit to bolt into the block. Up here, it's just like a 12 or 13mm bolt. Next thing, you want to take a 17mm and crack this fuel line loose. Be careful, fuel will come out, but you gotta take this off. You can leave the other end attached, but you gotta take that end off to take this intake off. For ease of access to some of the stuff in here, I'm just gonna go ahead and take the oil filter off. Easy enough to take off, and it gives us access to a lot of other things. So if you notice here, this wiring harness bracket, it's got a couple clips. It needs to be removed. This electrical connection back here needs to be removed. You already disconnected this, but it needs to be pulled through. And then The intake runner position sensor is right there. That needs to be removed. And then this is like, I think the oil pressure sensor or temperature sensor, I'm not sure exactly, but this needs to come out as well. And just be very careful. Volkswagen plastics are extremely brittle and they will break on. All right, now we're gonna take the intake bolts off. So these are the ones, you see the ones that go all the way through? Those are the intake bolts. Don't take these off. They're just to hold the fuel rail to the intake manifold itself. So there's 4 up top, and then there's 2 of these Torx T30s on the bottom, and then you got those 10mm bolts through the studs that come out from the head. You got 2 options here as well. There's one more thing we need to remove. Either you take out the electrical connection and this whole thing comes with the intake, or you just take this hose out. So once I took this hose off of this thing, I squeezed this clip and just slid it off, and that way it's off to the side. And now you can see everything is removed, and we should be able to pull the intake off. It's better to kind of rock things back and forth. That way you know you're not catching on anything. Come out very, very slowly and start to flip it up. And that way you can see, hey, you know what, am I still connected to anything? Now, one thing you might be connected to is the fuel injectors. They might come with, so three of them came with it and 1 got left in the head. So if that's the case and your fuel injectors came with you, just disconnect the electrical connections to them and just pull the intake off and then get the fuel injectors out. So here's our intake in its full glory. Couple things you will have to do once you pull your intake manifold. Look at these these fuel injectors. They are completely clogged, and I'm guessing that on your car they will be too. So those either need to be replaced or sent off and rebuilt, or you can try to clean them. The other thing is the seals on the fuel injectors. So here you can see the seals need to be replaced, and that there's a special kit that you can buy to replace the seals, and you have to buy the seals as well. And so you do have to replace those if you're going to put this back on.